And we're live.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Awesome. How timely. I thought a good follow up for last episode's disruption and pivoting would be to compartmentalize. And wow, where your mind goes, the energy flows. Today is a great example of why it's so important to learn to compartmentalize and you can share the benefits, the psychological benefits of the compartmentalizing. But I think we both got some news right before our recording that shifted our energy and our state and possibly our mood temporarily. And originally, I wanted to talk about compartmentalizing and time blocking because over the last week, I have been super dedicated to compartmentalizing and then via time blocking, where I will look at my day and say, okay, from this time to this time, I'm going to work on only this. And then when I get into that time period, I only work on that. And I don't think about anything else except for being in the flow of what I'm working on. And I found that I was able to accomplish so much in a day, in half a day, in an hour, in 15 minutes, whatever. When you break it down, I don't time block any smaller than 15 minutes at a time. And then when I look at my entire week, I think, wow, that's amazing. And now I know that I should shift to get up just 30 minutes earlier so I can have even more benefits in the morning and keep accomplishing my goals. But I wanted to hear from you, Dr. V, on the research you've done and the background you have on the mental benefits of time blocking and compartmentalizing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just talk a little bit about kind of what you were talking about in terms of why you had to compartmentalize. And I think compartmentalization has gotten a bad rap, right? When we tell people, oh, you're compartmentalizing, what we often mean is you're not actually integrating all the parts of your life. And we often, particularly in relationships, will see that as a bad thing. You're compartmentalizing. So when you go to work, you don't think about home at all. And when you're home, you're not thinking about work at all. Or you're compartmentalizing your friends, right? You don't integrate your friends from work with your friends from church or whatever. And compartmentalization is actually a very normal and I would say a healthy tool in certain contexts. It's a healthy coping strategy. And the way that you compartmentalized last time and I'm compartmentalizing today is that when you have, I mean, we live in the digital world, right? We live in a very digitized world. And so just before I started this call, I got a text, right? And of course, what do? I look at the text because it pops up on my phone. And I went, oh no, it's somebody's sending me a text telling me something that kind of affects me emotionally. And I think last week, Mindy, you had something that kind of affected you just emotionally before our call. And then both of us said, okay, I'm going to set that aside.
Yes,
I'm not going
exactly.
to let that get in the way of this call. And that's emotional compartmentalization, right?
Mhm.
Compartmentalizing different events into different boxes so that the emotions I feel about this event don't leak into the emotions that I want to have and feel in this event. And given, all of the challenges and difficulties that we are going through. These are some very, as you said yesterday, extraordinary times and challenging times. We are seeing things on media that probably affect us, probably bring up emotions. We might have family and friends who are calling and having their own emotions or not. We may be having emotions and feeling like our family and friends don't share the emotions I'm having, and that might bring up feelings for me. And then I have to go into work mode. I have to be able to focus, organize, be productive, maybe even be positive, like in my work. This is probably the first time in my career, which is 40 years old, of where I'm going through something huge and emotional and troubling that is happening at the same time as all the people I work with. And it's very similar to what they're going through. Typically, they're going through something that's quite different from mine. So I'm able to set aside my stuff and really be available for them. Or we're both going through something and it's not nearly as challenging for me. So I'm able to be present for this person. This is the first time where we're really in the soup together. And while we're both navigating the soup, we're trying to be in our roles, right? My role as a coach and a consultant and a teacher, um, and your role as a business owner and boss. These are all things that we like to bring a certain attitude. And how do you bring that attitude when all of these things that are happening around you and outside of this, moment is impinging on it? And that's the strategy, the coping strategy of compartmentalization that I think is a very valuable one to develop. What do you
Absolutely.
think?
I agree with you. And I hadn't thought of you being in the same, as you say, soup as the clients. And I've been in that situation in real estate when someone's expressing concerns or, fears or just going through the process. And I had been in a position so I could have empathy and sympathy. But yeah, I think it's an understanding that we are all obviously in this time together. And I think that it's interesting when you said compartmentalizing and, showing up as a boss. I also thought compartmentalizing was a nice break for me this last week, not only emotionally so I could achieve what I wanted to achieve, but also I think it's the anti multitasking, which I think for me, I used to say I was good at it, but I think I was lying to myself because, I don't think unless you're totally present that you can't, achieve as much as you want. So I've found great relief in the time blocking and compartmentalizing because I can break it down and go, okay, I can do all these things and maybe even more in the day if I just simply break it down into little steps instead of, attacking it all together and just seeing what I can do, like Dr. Seuss keeps coming to my mind when I'm talking about my the picture with the drums, with all the musical instruments. What book is that? All the Places You'll Go.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, all the places you go.
Yes, there you go. So I found great relief emotionally and fulfillment in time blocking. And it's a break from whatever you have going on here that you can go back to, but that doesn't have anything to do with what you need to accomplish during the workday.
So I want to introduce this idea or this question of why can't we all compartmentalize successfully, right? What gets in the way? And I think one thing that gets in the way of compartmentalizing successfully is that there is a part of you that is emotional. And let me also back up and just talk a little bit about parts, right? We are all multidimensional beings. So it doesn't make you crazy, doesn't mean something's wrong with you. If you can feel different voices in your head or hear different voices in your head, right? Normal people do this. And we recognize two things that makes us not crazy. First is we recognize that this voice is me and it's coming from me and that I'm actually just thinking it, right? I'm not confused about where this voice is coming from. And secondly, it really feels like, oh, I have one part of me that can see this situation from this way and another part of me that can see it from this way. And I recognize they're both part of me and just different perspectives. So all of us have that. We have different parts. And I would say some of our parts are the ones that show up when we're doing time blocking, or when we're even thinking about doing time blocking, or thinking to ourselves, I'm not going to let that affect me here. I'm going to, put that away or set that aside and show up in this conversation with the attitude I want to have. Okay. So let's call that part like a manager. It manages your life. It gives you ideas. It teaches you how to manage your schedule, your day, how to be productive. It sets goals for you. But there's also parts of us that are more emotional. Some of these parts feel like little children, right? Some of them feel like adolescent parts of us, but some of them might also be adult parts of us. These are parts of us that just feel emotional, that carry emotions from our lives, that carry emotions from what is getting stirred up in me, from all the things that are happening around me. I think when I'm in a conflict with somebody, then there's a verbal content that happens between me and this person where we have this exchange, but there's also an emotional content or an emotional reaction, right? And long after the verbal content has ended, that emotional reaction might live on in my body. That's a part of me that's a more vulnerable part of me, a more emotional part of me. When that part of me doesn't feel like it's going to get time or that it's going to get what it needs, a lot of times what those emotional parts need is just validation. Just somebody to say, you're not crazy. The way you saw this or the feelings you're having makes sense. And what happens in conflict or when we're, impinged by outside events is that sometimes we say to our spouse or partner or friend, oh my God, I'm thinking blah, blah, blah. And the other person goes, that makes no sense. Now this part of me feels like nobody understands, or I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard. Well, guess what? Then that part is a little bit on fire, right? And so then what it does is it wants to jump in the driver's seat. It wants to drive the bus or the train, whatever you want to call it. And when it tries to do that, it actually interrupts and affects and kind of destroys or distracts you from being able to do something else, because this part of you is saying, whoa, wait, that person over there dismissed and discounted me. Now I need you to pay attention to me. And if you're saying, I don't have time for you right now, then that part is going to kind of explode a little, right? And that is what gets in the way of being able to compartmentalize successfully. And so what's the answer? The answer is that when you feel that emotional part of you, that vulnerable part of you, really reacting to something, give it a minute, right? I think you said that successfully last week, Mindy. You said, I can't start right now. I need 10 minutes. I need 5 minutes. I don't know what you did in those 5 minutes, and I'd love for you to talk about it. But what I would suggest is give that part of you 5 or 10 minutes to go inward and to say to that part, what do you need? Sometimes all it needs is some reassurance. Oh, you're not going to drop this, that you're not going to ignore it, that maybe now's not the right time, but that you're going to come back and you're going to either have a conversation with this other person or you're going to give it some time to process and metabolize whatever the emotions are that are coming up. So let me ask you, Mindy, to talk a little bit about what happened for you that you did after that emotional part of you got activated.
Oh, yes. And it was unexpected. So I took a moment and I did my best to make a bid to heal the conversation. And I just sent a quick message and I said, hey, I think that went way off track. I'd like to circle back. Right now, I need to do some live recordings. So I'd like to be able to talk to you at X. Can we meet for lunch? And then, so we did. And then I felt like, okay, I did my part. I let go of the outcome, whatever happens next. And I felt better because I didn't leave it up in the air, but I was able to then just breathe. And then I get in the zone, which looks like I'm highly visual. And so I go in my mind and I just focus on being here with you. So before I sat down with you last week, I visualized sitting down with you and having a successful meeting, and I compartmentalized. I didn't think about what had happened before, and I just sat down and worked with what we had. So it was a great relief for me, and I needed the distraction, and it was not that big of a deal, but it did jar me and it distracted me from my flow of my zone. I'll tell you, yesterday, when I'm highly visual and I'm focused on what I'm doing, sometimes I get overwhelmed if there's too many things coming at me. So yesterday it was like the marching band in here. I did not know I was going to have 2 contractors in here fixing a repair all day, working around my housekeeper, working around my Yorkie, working around my daughter. And I needed to, what turned out to be 6 hours worth of food photography. So I had baked for 4 hours the night before so I could shoot new food photography that I've never done before. And then of course you have to, make it all look like Instagram because it's going to go on Instagram. So fortunately my daughter was here to help me. But while all of this is going on around me in this small space that I live in, 2 people in my bathroom, I basically got kicked out of there all day, no notice. And then so the housekeeper's going around like in her mask, like where do I go? What do I do? And I set up at the dining room table. We only have one dining room table with all of my props for the photo shoot. And I thought, we're doing this. We're doing this today, and they can all work around and we can work around, and it's not going to be ideal, but we're going to do it anyways. And it turned out to be great fun. It was a bonding experience with my daughter, and the pictures turned out great. And it was a thrill. And I was relieved to not have been overwhelmed or delayed my photo shoot, because when you're working on a project, everything links together. So I had to bake it to photograph it because I had to deliver it, because I don't want it was like 12 items, 12 families could have eaten this, but I had people to give it out to, and I wanted to give it when it's fresh. So I wanted to stay on schedule and meet my needs. So I really did my best to just basically put myself in a bubble. And I had to do some breaks, and I, worked on being flexible, which is, sometimes interesting when it was like the marching band coming through, like, here they come again. But at least it was still photography and not video.
Yeah, very true. So, it sounds like one of the things that you were able to do apart from compartmentalizing is prioritizing, right? And so I think that is also a really important coping strategy that our managers need to develop, right? So think about this part of you that helps you manage your life as having a toolkit, right? Compartmentalizing is one of the tools in that toolkit, but compartmentalizing isn't successful if you're not prioritizing accurately. That's when those other parts of you are going to rebel, right? They're going to jump up and down and say, wait a minute, no. You can't be focusing on, what did you say, the marching band right now, because you promised this, baked goods to delivery, and you can't be focusing on the baked goods delivery when your bathroom's falling apart.
The people come in the front, the back, it was just everywhere. It was funny, comical.
So I'm just thinking that prioritizing might be another aspect of this for us to talk about just briefly. And how do you prioritize? So in your life, Mindy, what is the thought process you go through in trying to decide or figure out what comes first, and then what are you going to put off to the bottom of the list?
That looks different today than it did 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, the list always was work, achieve, And then I was at where, I wouldn't have any time on my schedule for eating or picking up dry cleaning or any of those things. And I've learned a lot over the last 10 years. So my list is balanced. I use prioritizing in my time blocking and compartmentalizing. So I look at the goals that I want to achieve, personal and professional. So, for example, I am working on walking, hiking, running 2,020 miles this year. So I effectively need to walk or get that in by foot 8 miles every day until the end of the year. So that's one of my goals. So that's the health part. Another goal I have is education. So I'm working with a tutor right now, a math tutor. And so I have that part that I have time blocked. I also am helping grow our real estate business. So I have that time blocked, and that's a goal of mine. And then I'm launching a food bakery treat line, and that is a startup. So I have that compartmentalized. And there's no way I could accomplish or work towards accomplishing the goals that I have because I have a lot of big, exciting goals and focuses right now that also obviously have time in my schedule for my daughter and my husband. That needs to be worked back in more because of the stay in place and because we both do a lot of videos during the day and we're working, together but separately. And we're not having date nights on Friday nights anymore because, obviously because of the situation we're in with distancing. But so he needs to be brought back in to have a bigger chunk in the evening time. But so I look at my goals and what I want to achieve, and I make sure that every day in some way I'm touching one part. So on Fridays, obviously time block for our time together here. And then I will time block or allow when I'm checking for email on design that your fabulous, talented daughter's helping us with. So anything that's important that I want to achieve and push forward, I make sure that it's included on my daily schedule. So I map it out and I stick as close as possible to that. And I use my notepad on my phone. So when I need to, I can change the times a little bit if I need to. And then if I know I need to come back, then I will add it later, stay up later, whatever, do whatever. And then speaking of, I time block my sleep, a minimum of 7 hours.
So it sounds like you time block pretty much every moment of your life. Is that true? Or do you give yourself wiggle room in there?
I do have wiggle room, and I time block from 4:30 in the morning until about 1:30 in the afternoon. So that is probably the strictest schedule. And then I have time with my daughter after her math tutoring. And then in the evening time, I have more flexible time. And I do also have an hour and a half to 2 hours of relaxing. And my relaxing may look different than other people's relaxing. But if I'm sitting on the couch and I'm researching, that's relaxing for me. So it just depends on what I want to do. But I do allow for some downtime, but I have not this week planned for major disruptions. I've just worked around those.
Yeah, so, you're saying some things that I think are really important here. One is that you don't have to time block every waking moment. In fact, that's not helpful because then you don't have any room for something unexpected to happen or for something to take a few extra minutes here and there. So it sounds like you have a certain time of the day that's your strict time block, and then you have a certain other time of the day that's a little bit more spontaneous. Certainly, we're not suggesting that compartmentalization and prioritizing should be taking over your life and you should become like no fun, and no energy person. Yeah, so I was thinking, I am not a 4:30 a.m. person. I really do, and I know that's a great time of day because the sun is just over the horizon. The birds are just waking up. It's really the most wonderful time of day if you ever are able to kind of consistently wake up at 4 or 4:30. In fact, in Ayurveda and yoga, they call that the Raja Yuga, or the king, the time of kings, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
it's supposed to be when the electromagnetic field of the earth is actually at its most sort of um, peaceful, or the most undisturbed. And so when you meditate during that time, your brain synchronizes with that frequency and tends to produce a lot more repair and healing, and also sort of sets you up for a wonderful day. So it's supposed to be a great time. I'm much more of a late night person. So my day starts around 9 and ends around 7. And what I've had to do is really say I don't start work till 11, even though I'm waking up well before that, let's say between 7:30. I still want those first 3-4 hours of the day to myself, because I've found that if I say I'll go for a walk and I'll exercise and I'll eat breakfast and I'll, take a shower, drink a cup of coffee, whatever it is that I do in my morning routine, and I say I'm going to do all that, and I'm going to wake up at 5 in the morning and get all that done by 8 o'clock so I can start work at 9, doesn't work for me. So what I have to do is say, let my body sleep as long as it needs to. And I need an 8-hour night every night. I might not get 8 hours of sleep. I usually don't, but I need to be in bed between 8 and 9 hours so that my body then just gets whatever amount of sleep it wants to. And then when I wake up, and I hate waking up to alarm clocks. So this whole time period of sheltering in place has actually been a gift for me, because I don't have to set my alarm. And if I start at 11, then 11 to about 4 in the afternoon is my strict, 4 or 5 is my strict time blocking. And I time block in hour-long blocks. And so, or half an hour is probably sometimes I'll do, but my day literally goes by the hour. And I just have a calendar, and I just put all of the things I'm going to do, including lunch, including an hour to go for a walk or exercise, including if I decide on a Friday afternoon I'm going to take a nap, I put it in my calendar. I set aside the time. I set aside time for meditation. I also set aside time for socializing. Put that in my calendar, because when it's my calendar, it's a reminder, and it just automatically becomes this thing that I work around. Right? If it's not in my calendar, then there's so many things in my life, because I do manage a business and because I do work with people in distress, that they can all, like a vacuum, they can just take up all of the empty time on my calendar, right? So before I know it, I'm working through lunch, I'm working, past 8 o'clock and things like that. So I put everything that's important to me on my calendar, block that time off, so that then my appointments, work obligations work around that. And that's also a way that I prioritize self-care, which is something that's been very important to me in the last 2 months.
Super important. Well,
Yeah.
and I'm a recovering night owl. I can stay up with the best of them and, sleep in and all that, but I've flipped my schedule. My priority really is to get 7 hours sleep. So I love that morning time. And I've realized this week that starting on Monday, I need to start getting up at 4 instead of 4:30, because I start exercising early. And so walk 8 miles, it takes about 2 hours. So that's a good walking meditation, me time, focus time, sorted out time. My life coach sends me motivational, inspirational video messages that I listen to when I'm on my walk, and I get a lot of clarity and focus. So I have this past week during my lunch break, either taken a 10-minute power nap or 15, depending on how my body feels after getting up that early and how fast I walk. And if I need it, I have a little, power nap, and it works great. So I think whatever works best for you, and whatever season you are in life where you can sleep late. You know, my daughter does not sleep late, so going to bed early and getting up early, also being in stay in place. You know, I like to get up before everyone else so I can have some quiet time. So that's when I can get it.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
All right. On that note, it's been about 30 minutes since we started talking, I think. So I think this is a good place to wrap things up and to say we hope that you have enjoyed listening to me and Mindy have another conversation about some concepts that might be very helpful for you in your personal and professional life and in your business life. And we hope you'll tune back in next time and listen to us talk about another topic. Do we want to set a topic for next time, Mindy?
Do you have one in mind that would be a good follow up?
If we're talking about compartmentalizing and prioritizing, I wonder if time management might be, or stress management, time and stress management might be
Perfect.
good topics to follow up with this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, cool. So Mindy and I are going to talk a little bit and prepare our thoughts, and we'll see you back here on our YouTube channel next time talking about time management and stress management.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.